So audiation is basically the skill of like being able to hear something before you play it, which is like a really like essential musical skill, and I think it's something that tends to differentiate. I might say like I hesitate to use this phrasing, but if there's anything to me that differentiates like real musicians or like professional musicians or like music school musicians from other types of musicians, I think it's this skill. So it's basically like getting out of one guesswork where you're like playing a fret and hoping that it sounds like the one that you want. It's like getting from that to being able, like knowing that you're going to get the sound that you want because you clearly understand what you're hearing in your head and you clearly understand the sound that the key or the fret you're about to play is going to make. And it's super connected. And so you can think in sounds, you can think in shapes, you can think in melodies and all of that stuff. Um, and the cool thing about this, when this is together, also is that you're not like playing notes on the fretboard, listening to the note, and then being like, okay, now what goes next? Because that, where you're like, play a note, think about it, play another note, puts you in a state where your thinking is going to limit your phrasing. Because if you need to play a note and then think about it and then play another note, then you can't, like, you're just not going to play a stream of notes that sounds like a melody. And so that's why you get a lot of like, I don't know, like guitarists who are in high school who like do this thing. I'm just gonna like demonstrate what this tends to sound like. If people are playing a kind of solo that sounds like they're like, it's like they're not leading with the, they're just like, they know that these notes are there and they're playing notes and hoping that music comes out. And that's fine if you're 15 years old, but like nobody here is 15 years old, and we got to get way past that. So audiation is really this super important underlying skill. um okay, and so just like as a frame for the value of audiation, does this make sense to people? Cool. Okay, so Audrey, I know that you have some background with all of this stuff, and you started off, you mentioned like doing opera. um Tell me about your ability to like sing intervals.
I think that I relied on a lot of memorization, and now, like, I'm trying to train myself to practice intervals, hearing them, hearing chords, hearing chord progressions. Um, but it's something that doesn't, it's like you're practicing it in this like vacuum kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
That
Okay.
applying it into music is different. But I can match pitch and I can sing intervals, not super skillfully, but somewhat.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Can you sing like a perfect fifth? Like right now, just like any note and then a perfect fifth above it? I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but I am.
Um,
Sorry.
uh, da, da, da.
Okay, great. Can you sing 1 3 5? So like a major triad, and then sing the 4, sing a major triad off of the 4, and then go back to the 1 and sing 1 3 5 on the 1.
1, 3, 5, 4, 4, doo, doo.
Yeah.
Did I get off there?
Yeah, no, you're good. And then we could, I would say
Da,
one again.
da, da.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Okay, cool. So this is really important. What you're doing right now is like you are, I'm just thinking because I've got to structure all these words in my head at once. So what you just did was outlined not just an interval, but you're outlining a harmonic framework. So I think when it comes to like audiation, there are a few different levels to this, and I can give tips, but I can't necessarily like obviously I can't give you the entire path in one go. Oh, bye Sage. Oh, word. Okay. Um, well, I will talk to her soon. Talk to them soon. Okay. So what you're doing is you just communicated a harmonic like framework as well as a series of notes. So yeah, the question is like, how do you go from intervals as an exercise to intervals as something that's actually directly connected to musicality? And what I'm seeing in what you just did is that there are strong fundamentals in place, which means that we can talk about kind of the next thing. So first off, being able to sing intervals, hold your intonation is going to be huge. The next step, um, and it's cool that you have this because you're a singer, is like if you can play a full melody over like a pedal tone, like if you're singing a melody that's in C major and you just play the note C and you sing the melody and you're able to hold the whole like key, the whole kind of harmonic space in your ear as you're singing it. And because you're a vocalist, like you'll know that intonation might deviate slightly, but like you're basically there. Like you're not singing a seventh and thinking it's a sixth, or you're not singing a fifth and thinking it's a fourth or something. Like maybe you're like 3 cents sharp or something, but it's basically the right. So that's kind of like the next step. So now we're like holding harmonic systems in our head. And so then there's like melodic improvisation, and then there's eventually harmony shows up, but I'm going to talk about melodic improvisation first. So the question is, how do we go from singing a melody that we know over a pedal tone, so like a melody in C over like a C drone, to improvising a melody in C over a C drone? If I asked you to improvise a melody in C, like if you're like at a piano and you're just playing the note C, because you sent me some songs and I jumped around in them and stuff like that. I feel like you would be able to improvise a melody with your voice in in C, like over that.
Over a pedal tone, probably, yeah.
Okay. So you're improvising with your voice over a pedal tone, and then just focusing on melody before harmony comes into this. The next step, and I think you might be kind of far along with this, just based like the piano songs that you were sending me, there's some good stuff going on. So, and I don't mean that as like there's some good stuff going on, but it's like for what I listen to, I'm like, okay, this is cool. So the next thing is to try to get the keys of the piano or like with a guitar, the frets of the guitar connected to your voice. So the question that I would have for you is like, if you're trying to improvise a melody in C and you're singing it, can you put your fingers over the keys that you're singing?
I've been researching a little bit and it seemed like that was the first step I should try. And I thought it'd be so easy and I was way off.
Mm,
So I too internally come up with like a 3 or 4 or 5 note melody in my head.
yeah,
And then first of all, actually singing that, a lot of times I'd be off. You know, I
yeah,
think my internal ear can hear it. And then I try to sing it and I realize it's a bit more vague. Like
yeah,
I don't grasp it as much as I think that I do. And then trying to play it on the piano. Um, Sometimes if I'd been in doing it in the same key for a while, then it would come a lot easier. And I think it's kind of like that example you're saying where, you know, and no shade on like yes, it you know, the young people that are doing that, but where you have already the references in your head. So it might I think I that's something I will practice more a little bit.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, Part
Okay,
of me,
cool. I understand. For time's sake, I'm gonna dig in more. Okay, so this should be something that is actually equally easy to do in pretty much any key, in any key. And the reason for that is that we don't hear, unless you have perfect pitch, in which case this could mess with that. Do you have perfect pitch? Perfect pitch?
no.
Okay, cool. You're actually in some ways much better off. I don't have perfect pitch. I have, I think, very highly developed relative pitch. I say I think because there are just people who have taken it further. There's always somebody who's taken it. Like, I mean, people do incredible things with this. But so basically, a major shift that happens is when we stop thinking in terms of note names and we start thinking in terms of scale degrees. And so, like, I can go do ba da ba da da do. Okay, this is one. Do da da ba da da do do ba da da ba I don't know what key that was in, but I know what all of those scale degrees were. And so there's some degree of familiarizing yourself with the piano where you're like, oh, in B flat, D is 3 or whatever. Like that will be a stage that you go through. Um, but thinking in numbers in this way is way easier because the numbers have the same sounds regardless of what key you're in. But if you're like learning scales, you're learning different keys, and there's a visualization thing with the piano, then we can kind of like take that over to the side and like not worry about it for a second and say, if we're just in C, what we want to do is dramatically limit the difficulty of the challenge that you're setting for yourself. And so if you're improvising a melody in C, but your only options are C, D, and E, you're going to learn the differences between the sounds of those keys very quickly. So you're improvising a melody, but it's without like a beat or like a cool chord progression, it's really hard to make those notes sound interesting. But that's also part of the point. Like you're just going to learn it really quickly. And after like 3 minutes, you're going to be like, okay, I get it. It's D. Like that's the note. Okay, so then you add F. Also, can people hear me when I'm singing? I can turn on my original sound. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so now you know C, E, D, and F, or you know the sounds of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, add 5. Okay, so it's like I can feel this in my fingers like I'd play it on a piano. I can feel this in my fingers like I'd play it on a guitar. You get all that stuff connected. You add A. So now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You do the same thing. You add B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know, maybe you're going below the C. So you're singing. You can also, you can go down as well as up. And so that's how you can just kind of like broaden your sound like awareness of the different notes in the key. Also, you're frozen right now, but can you hear me? Okay, I'm gonna give it a sec. Is this helpful for everybody else?
It's really helpful for me. Like
Cool.
this is helping me a lot, especially I guess going off a tangent, I don't know, but like a big thing I'm trying to do is learn how to read sheet music faster
Mm-hmm.
for piano and like I guess it is like you instead of learning to read the notes faster, like try to translate the notes, it's about intervals
Yeah,
whenever you're which is like something I need to solidify in my head, like
totally.
learning to play.
Yeah.
I I don't know if I'm frozen yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think you froze for a sec. Yeah.
Hello?
Hey. Okay, I'm hearing you
Oh,
now.
am I unfrozen now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna cut my video so that I can still talk in case it's like connection. But okay, so you're suggesting to start with limited notes,
Yeah.
um, and just kind of do that from there.
Yeah. Add one note at a time.
Okay.
And then by the time that you get to the octave, you'll have practiced all of them.
Yeah. Okay. And for context, I can play all the major and minor scales in every key. Um,
Cool.
I try to drill that, um, so I can incorporate that in with trying to play that.
Cool. And so that just means it's going to be easier to do this in any key. But once you're in the space of the key, like once you're hearing C as the root, or hearing B flat as the root, or hearing D as the root, your ear's going to just like lock in, and you're going to, like, 3 is going to sound like 3 no matter what key you're in.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank
So there,
you.
yeah, for sure. So there's one further step to this, which is like what happens when harmony gets involved. Because like doing this over a drone is pretty straightforward. Um, at least it pretty quickly it becomes pretty straightforward. But if the chords are changing, then all of a sudden when the bass note changes, the experience of like color or like the feeling of every note completely shifts. And so like I do have much more kind of like systematized ways of like developing all of these things that are like I can't really summarize in one call. But the way that I would summarize it maybe from a distance is like if we're just playing 1 to 4, so like C going to F, you learn all of the sounds of all of the intervals in the scale relative to C, but then you also have to learn them relative to F. And so rather than singing the C scale over a C drone, you play an F drone and you improvise vocally with your fingers over the keys over that F drone. And then, once that gets comfortable, you can practice moving back and forth between the C drone and the F drone. So we've already learned C and F as like verticalities. And by verticalities, I just mean like, here are what all the notes in the scale sound like relative to this bass note. Or here are what all the notes in the scale sound like relative to this other bass note. But, and this is a place that I got stuck for a long time. It took me like a long time to figure out how to really practice this. If we're playing music, in almost every case, we have a fixed and limited amount of time on each bass note or on each chord. And so, like, we're probably not playing a piece of music that has 10 minutes of a C drone and then 8 minutes of an F drone. Like, that's very maybe you are, but that's very unlikely. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So where this goes is practicing essentially like voice leading between the chords. But voice leading is a term that has a lot of baggage that I'm hesitant to really get into. But what you can do is basically time it. Or rather than time it, like count it. So you have a bar of C and a bar of F. Or like, I'll do this on a guitar. So you have like, cool, original sound is on. I'm gonna do A and D. And I hope I'm kind of, I think I'm kind of close enough for rock and roll. I didn't tune before this, but I think we're gonna be fine. Okay, so here's 1 over to D, 4. Okay, great, 1 and 4. Whoa, this note that was like a third and it sounds all consonant and stuff over A, all of a sudden it's like, what is that? Like, with the right chord, it's gonna sound really pretty, but on its own, like, that's kind of crunchy. And some would say that it's a tension. And I just found that by improvising. Okay, cool. Now I'm just like, I'm like resolving a tension, but I'm just doing it by singing and discovering. So then here. Oh, now that note is like a calm note again. And so 1 and 4 are really easy in the grand scheme of things because they're in the same key. So all we're really doing is paying attention to how the quality or like the mood or the personality of each note changes between one bass note and another bass note.
Real quick, like, what do you mean they're in the same key? Because wouldn't any like scale degree be in that key?
Yes, but what if we're voice leading A major 7 to B flat major 7?
So it'd be like a 2?
Well, so the right, okay. Well, this basically what I'm getting into is that like it's easy because these chords are in the same key. But if we're talking about music more broadly, and because you were mentioning these like really deep jazz pianists when we communicated earlier, it's easy to the point of being very intuitive and simple when chords are in the same key. But if we're talking about like a jazz tune, there are going to be chords being borrowed from many different keys.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's just kind of like an additional degree of difficulty, and I think that comes after this familiarity with sort of like diatonic chords or chords that are in the key. Whoop. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that gives me a really great next step to keep working on.
Awesome. Cool. I feel like we did enough audiation for today. How do people feel? It's good. Cool. Does anybody else have any comments, reflections, observations, questions?
I was just going to mention, I actually just kind of started trying to do this on guitar,
Yep.
where I'm singing with the notes that I'm playing, just to
Mhm.
actually know where my solos are going.
Yeah, totally.
And that's, it's there's feedback in both directions doing that. Learning what notes vocally are in the scale and what to expect coming next and where I'm going. But it is, as you were both saying, it's a lot harder than it looks
Totally.
initially.
Yeah. And there's something that will happen in the early stages of doing this if you're just playing guitar and singing while you're playing guitar, where you might learn some stuff. But this is a place where a lot of jazz guitarists fall short because there are a lot of jazz guitarists who are like, yeah, I sing everything that I play. But the thing is that, and so many, this is like just, this has become such a soapbox for me because I did all the things you're supposed to do to get good at jazz guitar. And this, I didn't have this skill. And I just had all of these weird problems, and no jazz guitar teachers were really helping me. It's hard to find good, like, I'm also just, I'm a personality type where I'm like very genuine and kind of intense. And a lot of jazz dudes are just like, yeah, man, I don't know. And I'm just not a personality fit for that world. But so I did all this stuff that you're supposed to do. And nobody like within that world could be, they're like, I don't know, maybe you just are missing, like, maybe you just don't really get it. And so for me, I realized that this like singing as I'm playing thing helps up to a point, but especially if you're playing fast and especially if you've learned tons of fretboard information, but you haven't like also developed this aural awareness that comes with it, your voice is just going to follow the guitar. So it's really like the guitar is leading and your voice is following. And I do that all the time when I'm playing. Like if I'm playing jazz lines at tempo, sometimes I'll be singing a note that's a slightly different note. And it's not necessarily the end of the world, but I don't have the gigantic, like, gaping issues with my skill set that I used to have because my basics are way stronger. Um, and so for me, this was the solution. I practiced guitar stuff and scales and arpeggios and transcribed tons of bebop tunes for like 2 years, 19, well, like 3 years, like 19, 20, 21. And then for me, 21 was kind of the shift into working on this. And then 21, 22, 23, I basically just worked on audiation. And like for me, a lot of it was on the piano also, because I played piano as a kid. And I realized that I had this skill on the piano where I could put my finger down, I could put my finger above a key and know what it was going to sound like and then play it. This just came from playing piano for like 8 years or something as a kid. And then with the guitar, I'd learned all of this really fancy jazz stuff that had nothing to do with my ear. And I would just be like playing a fifth and singing an octave, or singing an octave and playing a fifth. So the sound that I thought was going to come out was just like not the sound that was actually happening. And we can say, oh, fifths and octaves, like that's pretty close. But if you're in like a real time situation, pretty close is like not, that's not what you want if you're trying to do this at a high level. You want like more control. And especially if it's one note at a time is pretty close, then if you get three notes in and you're just in completely the wrong place, then you're kind of in trouble. Um, so yeah, that was my own journey into it. And what I got from that, like that type of like audiation practice, it's like why was I able to make scores like just that were like so detailed? It's because I could sound it out in my head because I had these skills. And so I'm like, okay, D on a violin glissandoing up to like E 3/4 flat, which is like a niche, kind of a niche, like the notes between the notes thing. But I could just imagine, I can't sing quarter tones. I never worked on that skill, but I knew enough to have a sense of what it was going to sound like. And so this audiation skill was kind of the skill that made everything else possible. And then later with producing, it's like really, I mean, producing is still hard because it's creative. And so you're going out into the unknown. And so if you're doing something that you've never done before, it's hard because you're doing something that you've never done before and nobody else has ever done before. But there are basic skills. Like I just know, like it just makes everything so much easier. Um, so those are just additional thoughts on my own relationship to all of this. And so singing as you're playing lines on guitar, still helpful, but the practice of trying to sing lines without the sound of the guitar to help you, and then double checking to see if you're actually singing the right note by playing the fret and being like, oh, that's a different note. Or oh, hey, that's the same note. Nice. Either way, that's like kind of how you keep yourself honest. So yeah, I just have a lot to say about this. And it's cool to be talking about it because I think everybody here found me through the ads, and those were shot like a week and a half ago or something. And they were in my neighborhood, like we were shooting in my neighborhood, and I was just talking about everything that I thought might be relevant to people that I might be, compatible with from an education standpoint. And it's really cool that the algorithm just kind of took that and ran with it. So there are 24 other ads, and maybe one of them is getting seen. But audiation is a huge and really important topic, so it's cool to get to talk about that. And Audrey, thank you for asking.
Yeah, and I just have two quick questions. I know you want to get onto the production for the other
Yeah, yeah.
people. So just real quick, would you say that transcribing solos, like, did you feel that was, I don't want to say wasted, but like lesser importance to audiation? And second, like, how long did you and how often were you really like drilling that? Because I know you were probably immersed in music, but like to really lock that in, how long
Yeah,
did that
yeah.
take?
Yeah, these are great questions. Okay. I definitely got a lot from transcribing like just like a shit ton of solos. Like when I was in school, my second year at Oberlin, we were doing like 2 or 3 bebop solos a week. So that's just like like I had to like figure out how to play on guitar, which just like so you go one note at a time. You're like, what's that note? What's that note? So I learned how to like sweep. Like I didn't practice sweep picking. I just learned a ton of music that required me to build all of these skills. So from a guitar standpoint, made me a way better, like it totally changed my physical relationship to the instrument. It made my like jazz improvising sound a lot more like actual music. Cause like when people first want to play jazz, their sounds like ba da ba da ba 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 ba, and it's just awful. It's like that's not what the music actually sounds like. So that was really helpful. But when I got to the music school, when I got to NEC, the music school that I went to, my teacher who said this to me, like, if you can't hear it, you can't play it. And like in our first lesson, he was like, I don't think you know how to improvise. And it totally blew my mind. I took his classes. He taught 3 semesters of required year training. And then I studied with him privately. So I got really deep into his world. He's kind of a character. His name's Hank Kisnetsky. He's also like a leading authority on Jewish music, if that's of interest to anybody here. But basically when I got to NEC, I was playing stuff with pretty like authentic, like rhythmic feel, and I was playing notes that were like correct, but they didn't really add up to anything. It was like gibberish. It's like using all of the syllables and cadence of English, but without any of the meaning. And so he was trying to figure out what my deal was, and I didn't know what it was because I was like 21. And he was eventually like, I think you're playing by feel. It's like the rhythms were right, but like the melodies weren't, they were just a bunch of frets that I was playing. Um, and so by going back to the basics and working on all of these audiation skills, the improvising, it was so humble. I mean, my playing got way dumber like immediately because I wasn't trying to just play all this fast stuff that I could play. I was trying to like hear, like I took this really seriously. And I went from sounding like I was like really good at jazz in my first semester to sounding like a total beginner in my second semester. But I was like rebuilding my playing from scratch. So I just had to go back to really fundamentals, like really basic things. And I mean, at that age, like 3 months sounds like forever. Now 3 months to me sounds chill. It's fine. But it I mean, I think I spent the whole first summer after that year just like working on it for, I don't know. I was working on it. Like, I basically just would practice or not practice and like eat or sleep. Like, I mean, I was learning like 2 Django Reinhardt songs a week or something at that point. Like, it was like, I was like really in it, but I practiced it a lot, and it took me a lot longer than I wanted it to get the fundamentals down. And then I remember by that fall or winter, I was working on like standards. So I was like starting to be able to sing changes, which is, I was trying to get to the point where I could hear this stuff in like a pretty advanced harmonic context, like jazz standards and stuff. Um, yeah, honestly, it's been, I don't remember the details of it. I know that by the time I was 23, I was like learning a lot of Thelonious Monk tunes by ear and like playing them on piano and like going one note at a time and trying to sound out each chord. And like I was a guitarist, but I was practicing a lot of piano because it was just making my ear so much stronger and I was singing stuff. I don't know. It was a long-term thing and it's still ongoing. Just whenever I'm practicing improvising, I'm working with my ear. But it's like getting the fundamentals down. Just, oh my God, just changes everything. Also, transcribing singers. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's like it's funny, it's kind of frustrating when you like my taste where I know I should do the fundamentals, but I'm like, there's no tension, doesn't sound as beautiful. It's very basic, but it's important. So it's a good reminder to hear that. So,
Totally.
and if you want to move on to production stuff, then that's cool with me.
Totally. Yeah, I'm passionate about talking about this. But yeah, we will move on to production. It's just like the work that you do on the fundamentals. It's like there's an image in my head, but I don't really know how to describe it. It's like this much work, I don't know, this much work on fundamentals means this much changing in your perspective. It's like it like balloons, like it's crazy. It's like when I say in the ad, like it's like the most important thing, whatever, it completely changed my relationship to music. And then you don't need tabs and you don't need to watch YouTube videos and you just learn straight from recordings. And then all the details of the recordings that make it alive, you're in touch with that. And you're not like, I haven't looked at Ultimate Guitar in 15 years, like, or whatever. Or I don't know if there's a similar piano thing, but like it's not like I don't know anything about YouTube guitar teachers. I watched a video with Rick Beato once because we went to the same music school. But like other than that, like I paid zero attention to that stuff. And I don't need to, and it's awesome.